The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for today's opposition preview. We are playing Aston Villa this weekend, not on Saturday, but on Sunday. So make sure you are aware that before you set off for the game. You don't want to be turning up 24 hours too early. Today we are joined by a very special guest, somebody who's going to fill us in on what we can expect from Sunderland's opponents. And I was just saying to this fella before we hit record that it's been that long since we were in the Premier League that these are purely educational from my point of view, because I do not know very much, clearly, about the teams that we face each and every week in the Premier League. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Jacob Tanswell from The Athletic. He is the Aston Villa writer for The Athletic. Good morning, Jacob.
Good morning, mate. And yeah, thank you for having me on. It was good to come on, obviously. For me as well, I've never been to the stadium. Like, it's the only stadium in the Premier League that I've not gone to yet. So I'm very excited about this game. And it's one of these trips that I was looking forward to at the start of the season.
Oh, you're getting the posh treatment now, man. We've been promoted. they've done all the press box out in the press area downstairs in the stadium. It's all spick and span. So you're coming in at the back post and winning that free header rather than the hard yards that some of the press have had to do over the last few years in League One, where they were probably just looking to get a sausage roll and a piece of cheese for the food before that game. You're getting in there at the right time.
Fantastic. I think it's going to be a little bit different to the likes of Luton Town, for example, when they came up, when the press box is still not great. But listen, beggars can't be choosers. And yeah, that'll be even better, make the experience even better, I think.
Yeah, you are up in row Z. I mean, row ZZZ, right up in the sky. Make sure you pack a scarf and a hat, because it's a different climate up there in the top of the Jimmy Montgomery stand at the Stadium of Light. But just before we kind of crack into the game and stuff, what's your background then in terms of covering Villa? And obviously the Athletic are such a prominent organisation now in particularly in sports, but in football now in this country, and in the Premier League. So what's your kind of background when it comes to covering Villa?
Yeah, so this is my third season covering Aston Villa. I had one season at Southampton. That was my first year at the Athletic. And that obviously didn't go very well. They finished ranked bottom, and it was pretty terrible. So I had the decision whether to stay covering Southampton in the Championship, or this opportunity came up covering Aston Villa, and obviously it's coincided with a brilliant part of and a brilliant time in their history, really, in terms of the first year they're in the Conference League. They then get to the semi-finals of the Conference League, but then finish in the top 4, finish in the Champions Leagues, and then obviously last year you go away to PSG, you beat Bayern at home, Villa do, and yeah, it's a brilliant story, really. So yeah, my background's that I'm fairly relatively young for a journalist, so I'm still learning the way, but this is my 4th season in total at the Athletic.
I'm presuming you feel like you got in at the right time, then. It's been a fun few years, hasn't it, for Villa?
Yeah, my predecessor, Greg, always is keen to remind me that, he was doing the Remy Gard, Tim Sherwood era when, they would finish on 17 points. I kind of did get in at the right time, and it's been all plain sailing, but like we'll probably come on to, this is the first time where you start to think, it's probably going to go downhill now.
Yeah. It's like I say, it's been a turbulent few years, but mostly ups. And you mentioned it there in recent times, playing in the Champions League, which I can remember when Sunderland went down from the Championship in 2018. I think Villa, we played Villa in the Championship that year, so we talk about how quickly things have changed at our club in terms of going from the lowest point we've ever been at to now finally being back in the Premier League. Like, I can remember playing Villa in the Championship in front of like 20-odd thousand people. So that turnaround's been pretty quick there, hasn't it, really? When you think about how quickly that sort of going from being in the Championship to all of a sudden spending hundreds of millions every year on players and playing, like you say, beating Bayern Munich in the Champions League, that's some turnaround.
Yeah, I think Villa's return to the Premier League can be defined in two chapters, really. So you have the Dean Smith part where Villa stay up and by the skin of their teeth, really, in that COVID lockdown season. Then you have, and then that follows in with the Steven Gerrard kind of meandering way. But then you see the turn, under Emery, the 18 months. So they were just outside the relegation zone and goal difference in the Premier League when he took over. They finished 7th that season, with Emery having 6 months of that season. And then he goes from that with basically the same squad, and we'll come on to it, that's an issue now. They finished 4th straight away. So in probably a year, they've gone from relegation contenders to real serious top 4 contenders. So the progression was so acute and so remarkable that everyone just seems like they're just catching up, and Villa fans are absolutely loving it. It was a golden time.
Do you attribute that mainly to Unai Emery then, because his track record as a coach? I know he got quite a bit of derision and stick when he was at Arsenal, didn't he? And a lot of it was unfair. It was just people taking pot shots at the way he spoke and things like that. But you look at his record as a coach. I mean, he's won so many trophies. And if you remember as well, when Newcastle, I think, fired Steve Bruce, it was sort of neck and neck between Emery and Eddie Howe, who got that job. So things could have been very, very different, couldn't they? And obviously, I presume that at Villa, they're over the moon to have him.
Yeah, well, Newcastle wanted him, and Emery dismissed it because he had a few concerns about Newcastle. And one of the reasons why he went to Aston Villa was because they would give him everything. They would give him the money, they give him the keys, they give him the land. In terms of, if you look at the control he has, it's a manager-led recruitment. He hires and fires everyone in the football department. I think apart from Guardiola, no one's got this level of autonomy he has. He, is remarkable, really. He is on a level to the owner. Like, even the owners have bought him a club, it's in the Spanish 4th division, to satisfy him. It's his power is incredible, and the transformation is down to him, because without him, Villa wouldn't have these expectations. They wouldn't want to compete in Europe. They wouldn't be so good at competing in Europe because of his 4 Europa League titles. So he's a brilliant manager. He's being tested now. But if you look at that team now, the same team was there under Dean Smith 5 years ago. The same back 4 started, which you'll probably see on Sunday, started in January 2022. Nothing's changed, really. So what he's done with these players, the likes of McGinn, Ollie Watkins, Ezri Konsa, Tyrone Mings, Emi Martinez, what he's done with those players and to see where they are now is contrasting. It's amazing.
Do you think that's more of a testament then to his ability as a coach versus, a lot of people would look at that and go, well, why haven't they gone out and spent money on players over the last 3 years in those positions? Is it a case of, those were just really good young players at one point and he's really kicked them on in their careers, or has he been restricted in his ability to spend in those positions?
It's all those factors, really. I think Emery's a brilliant maximizer of talent. You look at those, he's probably squeezed every last drop. And the question is, now that they're joint oldest squad in the Premier League along with Newcastle, the question is, have they reached their ceiling, basically? Do they need to then now turn over the squad? And Emery, because the recruitment process is so specifically geared to him, so the sporting director is Monchi. Emery hired him, basically, and Monchi is not there to sign his own players. He'll bring players to Emery, and Emery will decide whether he wants them or not. And a lot of the time he doesn't. He'll then choose his own players. And he wants proven players. So the recruitment's not been brilliant. Like, if you look at that team, it'll probably start on Sunday. Maybe only Morgan Rogers is the only signing that Emery's made that's actually in the starting lineup now, which is crazy to think. But all the other players have kind of come and gone. You know, they signed Moussa Diaby for big money. He's gone. You know, Leon Bailey was there, gave him a new contract. He's now left. A lot of these other players were on loan. So Longley, Zaniolo, Rashford, Sancho's now here. Asensio. These players were short term, and this is I think what Villa are suffering with now. They've signed a lot of players for the short term, and the clear aim's been to win now, and that's worked in the last 2 years. But now they're left with a team that's aging, probably reached their limits, and it's not really got any new, or any fresher. So we'll have to see. But Emery's a brilliant coach. There's still questions about his recruitment.
With the recruitment, I noticed when Villa made the Champions League, there were a lot of, maybe not big money necessarily, there were some big money signings, right? But big name signings. You mentioned Rashford, you mentioned Asensio, but they were just loans. Is there a concern there then that there's a lot of short-term thinking when it comes to sort of these big decisions? Because, you know, it might sound nice getting Marcus Rashford on loan or Asensio on loan, but then if they leave after a year, that's a big hole you've got to try and plug, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know, I actually wrote a piece, and it's out this morning, in terms of what Villa's current struggles are, because their clear aim's always been to win now. And this has been an issue with PSR on the UEFA restrictions as well. They've been completely stifled this summer in terms of what they can spend and what they can do. That's completely disrupted the whole season. Basically, one of the big reasons why they haven't won a game yet. But at the same time, they are kind of their own worst enemies, because they're spending over 200,000 on salary for Asensio, over 250,000, 300,000 on Rashford's salary. They haven't got that money really, and they're not going to bring any back, are they? Those players aren't there, so they're spending all that money for short-term hits all the time. And if you look at Emery, and this is an issue that Villa have because of his power, when Newcastle were under a similar situation, sorry to mention them, Eddie Howe didn't sign a senior player for 3 transfer windows. Villa wouldn't do that because Emery wouldn't allow it. So even though ideally probably Villa would be better just to play and keep their cards close to their chest for what couple of windows, Emery always wants to improve the squad. So therefore, who's going to tell him no, basically? Who's going to say we've got no money? And this is why Villa seemingly every single summer are getting into more issues with PSR and the UEFA restrictions too.
What sort of transfer business did the club do over the summer then? Because I'm just looking at the list of names, and it doesn't look like very much was spent at all, which you've just alluded to there. You know, PSR has restricted what they've been able to do. There was a pretty hefty sum came back from the Jacob Ramsey deal to Newcastle, but I presume that was pure profit on the balance sheet, you know, to set them up in the future perhaps, because he's a young player from the system. You look at the list of names that they've brought in, and it's not inspiring particularly, is it?
No. So if you go through probably the only position they've actually upgraded in is their second choice goalkeeper, Marco Bizot. He's come in. He's played a lot of games due to the uncertainty around Emi Martinez. He's a cheap signing, fine. Evan Gesson, one of the attackers, very versatile, but he's very raw. He's not going to put up trees in his first year. So there's a lot of doubt with him, but there's probably a lot of promise. Well, but then you go into the 3 deadline day signings. So Villa had to wait basically because they didn't know how much money they would have to spend on deadline day. And yeah, Jacob Ramsey left for pure profit. But more of the issue for Villa this year was the UEFA squad cost rules, which means their salary cap has to be below 70% of their revenue. Right now, it's in the 80s, so they're going to get a fine there. And that was the big issue that Villa had, and the big issue was because they got penalised last year for breaching UEFA regulations. They were worried that it could potentially result in expel from the competition or being any other sporting sanctions. So they don't think that will happen, but it has meant that they've left their business very, very late in the day, and they have to sign a free agent in Lindelof, basically a straight loan in Sancho, because no one else really wanted him. He was on the shelf going into deadline day. And then Harvey Elliott, which probably is their best deal. It's a very favourable deal, 30 to 35 million obligation. It's a loan at the moment, which helps Villa in terms of structuring the payments.
And off the back of a really good summer with England. So there was a lot of talk about where he would end up. So that does look like a good signing. And
crucially, he's young. They're not signing these players that are perceived to be on the down slope or in their 30s. He's still very young. Like you say, has good momentum after the summer. So hopefully he can be the difference maker at some point.
Yeah. And you mentioned Evan Gassonda. I think he was briefly linked with Sunderland. That kind of stands off the page for the money spent. But the one I wanted to just bring up was Marco Bizot, because that's the guy that Emery just refused to stop repeating the name of, right, when he was interviewed on TV. That was bizarre, wasn't it? I know we've talked. We'll get into how the season's kind of started in a second, but it does strike me, that one, just because of his name and the fact that he did what he did. What was that all about? I mean, it was strange, wasn't it?
It's because Emi Martinez wasn't in the squad. So the interviewer was asking about Emi Martinez. Basically, Martinez wasn't in the right headspace, wanted to go to Manchester United. This was like the day before the deadline day. And so Emery thought, how's the best to counteract this, and how's best not to answer a question on this brilliant goalkeeper not playing for us tonight. And he just thought, I'm going to just repeat the name of the backup goalkeeper until I'm blue in the face, which is certainly a strategy, isn't it? But it has caused a lot of memes, a lot of attention all around the world.
Yeah. How much of an impact has that had, by the way, the whole Martinez situation? Because we're talking about a goalkeeper who is regarded as one of, if not the best in the world. Had a brilliant World Cup with Argentina a few years ago. Has that been detrimental to the team? The fact that such a big character has, nobody's known what was really going to happen with him up until really the end of the transfer window.
It's been a huge factor because of the uncertainty, not just in him, but because of Villa's, like I say, financial situation. A lot of players, their futures were uncertain. No one knew who was going to stay, who Villa were going to leave. Ultimately, it was Jacob Ramsey and Leon Bailey and those guys that moved on. But the likes of Morgan Rogers, the likes of Ollie Watkins, John McGinn, Emi Martinez, Boubacar Kamara, all these players are going into pre-season, planning for pre-season, but they're still really uncertain whether they're actually going to be here next month. Emi Martinez was probably the big standout example, because he was the one that openly and actively told everyone he was leaving, said his goodbyes last year, towards the end of last season, and wanting to leave. He was desperate to leave. And it gets to the point on deadline day where it's quite a remarkable scene. He's sitting at Bodymoor Villa's training ground, wanting to leave and refusing to accept, or maybe in denial actually, that Man United are not going for him. They're actually going for another goalkeeper. He was that gutted and that convinced that they were going to come for him. So having a player like him, who's such a massive character, such a big ego, big personality, and him being upset and him having now to reintegrate, it's not helped anyone.
Well, we'll quickly shoot to a quick break and we'll be back to chat about the season so far.
As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Right, and we're back, and I just want to quickly look ahead, or sort of behind ourselves a little bit here at the season so far, and we've briefly mentioned it. It's not really went to plan for Villa so far. I mean, the stat which just really just makes me roll my eyes and sigh is the fact that they haven't scored a goal yet, which just makes me think. I know they scored in the cup the other day, but I mean the Premier League, because I just think, oh, God, it's always Sunderland these teams come up against when they're going through a poor patch. But you kind of touched on it before there. It's an aging squad. Maybe Emery hasn't had the funds this year because of PSR and stuff. But so how far back is this sort of? You said before, it's been pretty plain sailing while you've been covering Villa. So how far back does it go where you started to get that feeling where it was like, this doesn't quite feel the same as it maybe did a year or two ago?
I think probably from this time last year. I know Villa did very well, but the first half of the season, they won 6 games in 21, which is nowhere near good enough for a team that wants to be towards the top end. And that's when you start to think, with the way Premier League's going, becoming more transitional, more direct, Emery's type of slow, methodical control, does it really suit? As it transpired, Villa then signed Rashford and Senso, short-term hits in January, got a lift, went on a brilliant run. But I think that kind of masked or papered over the cracks to some extent. So they obviously leave, the squad gets weaker. The team's not really evolved tactically. They're still playing the same way as 3 years ago. Teams are starting to figure out how they play. They're not coming to press them as much because they know if Villa needs space to work in, to kind of sitting in the mid to low block. But you see that, and probably that Man United game last year where they somehow lost to one of the worst Man United teams ever and failed to qualify for Champions League on goal difference when all they needed was a draw at Old Trafford. That's when you start to think, okay, they're going to really suffer because they're not going to be able to spend big. The squad's going to be despondent. The mood's going to be flat. And in truth, the mood internally has been like that, going into the start of the season. So there wasn't this buoyancy or the optimism going into the season like there usually is under Unai Emery. This god at Aston Villa is a bit flat. Everything seems to be a bit stagnant at the moment. And then you get into the matches, and they've literally created nothing. They're not even getting close to the goal. So it's probably alarm bells for you because they've probably come out as a regeneration of Guardiola's Barcelona team, but they've done absolutely nothing. They've just kind of passed it around, lost the ball, conceded. So there feels like there's a lot of things to fix. Whether they can do it in the next couple of weeks is unknown.
Strange that, isn't it? Because you look at how, for instance, how well Morgan Rogers did for England against Serbia, and then look so creative, so dangerous, and then for Villa, it's a different case. I mean, it's probably harsh to just pick him out, but you know what I mean. The fact
right,
that players have kind of gone off to play for the countries, did okay, and then come back is that must be concerning, surely.
Yeah, and I think with Morgan Rogers, there's a big structural issue. So he's basically playing the same position as he did for England. But if you look at his assist for Noni Madueke, he had a right winger with pace. Villa, partly because of restrictions I could have to keep going on about, but also Emery's manager-led recruitment process, they haven't got a right winger. They haven't got anyone with pace or width. That if you look at the left winger, the way that Villa play, he drifts in to become like a number 10, and the width comes from the left back. Where from the other side, the right winger it provides the width, but there's no right winger. So you have Gesson playing there. He's a number 9. That's his favourite position. Same with Donyell Marlon. John McGinn's playing as a right winger, and I'm sure you've not seen enough of John McGinn to know he's not a right winger. So with Rodgers, he's not got the pace or the runs around him to really combine at the moment. So that's causing him to obviously go down in performances, but it shows the broader deficiencies of the squad.
And the results, as I mentioned before, have kind of not gone to plan. I mean, they're not great, but at the same time, a draw against Newcastle isn't a bad result, I guess. Draw against Everton's not a bad result, but when it's then surrounded by a loss to Brentford and a battering off Palace, what's the sort of feeling off the back of that? Because if people were worried, the results would probably point to the fact that it's the season's maybe not going to get off to the start people wanted.
Quite frankly, I think the feeling is they're lucky to get 2 points, because if you go to those two draws, Newcastle did have Isak. Gordon was playing as a number 9, and he missed 2 clear chances in the first half, which he should have scored. Everton, Beto had huge chances. Michael Keane, if you believe in this thing, he had a higher XG than Villa. The whole team did. He missed a lot of chances as well. So if it wasn't for Emi Martinez putting off a brilliant save, Beto missed kicking when he had got no one around him, they'd probably go on to win that comfortably. So Villa feel that they're quite lucky to be on 2 points. And this is the mad thing, because this is a Villa team that's been one of the best in the country since Emery came. And they're struggling to even get points. And if you look, like, they'll be the third, if they fail to score at Sunderland, they'll be the third team in Premier League history failed to score in their first 5 league games. And if you extend that further, they obviously didn't score in the final game of last season. So it'd be 6 games. And that'd be the first time in the history, first or second time in their history as well. So the stats aren't good. The mood's probably at an all-time low under Unai Emery. So, yeah, I'm sure Sunderland fans are probably more fearful after hearing that, because they know there has to be a reaction of some sort at some point.
Yeah. How are fans feeling then? Because fans, obviously, I know what it's like with our fans. If that had been our form, there would have been absolute hell on, I think. People would have been going crazy on social media and all this. But Villa have actually been, threat in recent years with Champions League football and decent finishes and stuff. So how are people feeling? Is it a case of, oh shit, this is going wrong? Or is it a case of, it's okay, you'll turn it around at some point?
I think it's probably in the middle in terms of this is going wrong, but Emery should have enough. Like, he's such a brilliant manager. Like, he's still seen as like this god. He should have enough to eventually fix the problems. But they do, I think Villa fans do think, actually, we do probably have some fundamental issues at this club in terms of, like I say, we've not turned over the squad. Emery's got probably too much power, and I think fans are starting to cotton on to that. But he is, like I say, one of Europe's best managers. And you like to think, a bit like Guardiola did last year, with always issues, they still finish Champions League. I'm not saying Villa are going to finish Champions League, but they should, go deep in the Europa League, what they're doing now, or get their act together and get a top 8 finish or top 9 finish. That's probably what they're looking at. But for Villa to reach the heights that they have done in previous years looks completely unrealistic at the moment.
It totally escaped us that Villa were in the Europa League. I mean, is that kind of an issue too, or not? Where you see that with some clubs where they have a really good season and they finish in the European places, and everyone's like, "This is brilliant, we're in Europe," and then the next season that same squad's being stretched because they've got to travel all over the place during the week. Where, like, you'll come against a team like Sunderland, and we've got no European football. We've had a full week of preparation before a game. How are people viewing that? The fact that you're in Europe? Because, for me, I've never seen my team play in Europe. So if we were in Europe, it would be the best thing ever. But last season, Villa were in the Champions League. So is it almost viewed as a downgrade, or are people not looking at it that way?
It's obviously a downgrade, but I think this is the 3rd season, and Villa have never seemingly struggled in terms of managing the schedule. Like, even when they got Champions League, so they finished 4th, they were in the Conference League, so they're playing Thursdays, Sundays, and they managed it brilliant because Emery has won 4 Europa League titles. He knows what he's doing in terms of getting the right amount of rest, getting the consistency in terms of playing Thursday, Sunday. He loves it. He wants more games. So I think with other clubs, you probably have that bit of a worry that they'll be tired and too many games. But Villa, they're used to it now. Like, they enjoy it. If you look at the way they play, and they play this on Sunday, they're a team that doesn't actually use much energy. They're very controlled. The way they play is they basically want to conserve as much energy as possible. So they're not like going helter-skelter in away games and slugging out to the end. They're very controlled, and they will make a few changes, like 2 or 3 or 4 between the Europa League and Premier League. So I think actually Europa League is probably a respite for a lot of fans, and maybe for Emery, because he's brilliant. He's won this competition so many times. There's a good chance that he can go deep in this competition, and maybe people can forget, almost like Tottenham and Man United did last year, forget about the league stuff.
I guess it's an opportunity, isn't it, for your squad players to get games too, and that keeps them fresh. And it, not just in Europe, by the way, any cup competition, which is why during the week to go out to Brentford on penalties Did get the first goal of the season though, with a touch of fortune. But to go out of the cup to Brentford on penalties, it's another opportunity gone, isn't it? And sort of heading into this game, Villa have had fewer days preparation to get ready for the Sunderland game because, it was a matter of days ago that they were playing midweek and trying to give games to players like Harvey Elliott, to the likes of Jadon Sancho, who they want to get up to speed as quickly as possible. Yes, that's beneficial, but it does restrict that ability, doesn't it, to give people more games, people who are going to need games of football that ordinarily wouldn't get them every week in the Premier League.
Yeah, and it's why going out of cup competition particularly stings Villa fans, because they think it'd be unbelievable to rubber stamp this brilliant Emery era with a trophy. We just won a trophy.
Yeah.
They ever won a senior trophy since 1996, which it's not as long as some clubs, but it's still a long time for them. And you asked me earlier about when did the potential decline happen. I actually think that FA Cup semi-final defeat to Crystal Palace last in May or late April, whenever, was alarm bells, because that was a semi-final at Wembley against Crystal Palace, who went on to win it, and Villa lost that heavily. And that stung, because that was a golden opportunity to win a trophy. Carabao Cup, Emery's never really seemed to care about, and that drives Villa fans insane, because they're like, well, this is a brilliant way to win a trophy. We've got a good team, we've got a good squad, we can go and really cap and mark this brilliant time with silverware. So going out on penalties and just the limp nature of it stung. At the same time, but if you see the team that finished that game, a lot of them will probably start on Sunday. Brentford, on the other hand, made 10 changes to their starting lineup, so they were quite well. So that shows you where Villa are at the moment. If you're disappointed, and another wounding night.
That I guess is another negative then, I guess, in terms of the preparation for the prep, because it's an opportunity, isn't it, to get back on track. You look at that and you go, well, if we can have a good performance and a good win in midweek, it gets that winning momentum going. It gets some of the players who maybe weren't in the manager's thoughts for the weekend. It gives them the chance to turn around and say, I should be playing against Sunderland. It's disappointing. We had this a couple of weeks ago, or 3-4 weeks ago, whenever it was, when we went out of the cup to Huddersfield, because we were looking at it and going, yes, we'd rather not be in the cup because we need to concentrate on the league. But at the same time, that's an opportunity for our fringe players to prove themselves to the manager and give him headaches ahead of big games. And I'm going to ask you that, I guess, is that the case coming out of this Brentford game, that nobody really staked a claim for a chance to start at the weekend?
Yeah, I think so. And if you look at the best performance on the night, they'll probably start anyway. So John McGinn was probably the best player. Matty Cash, right. They both missed the penalties, but they're probably the best players. But they're the players that have to play, because Villa are very short in midfield. Barkley's unavailable. Amadou Onana, Kamara, Yuri Tillemans, their first four choice midfielders are unfit and not available.
So is Kamara definitely out, is he?
Kamara's working his way back, but he probably won't be able to play the whole game now. So that was the reason why McGinn started that game.
Yeah.
And he was the best player. So not many have probably made an impact. So I'd probably argue that Harvey is still getting up to speed, and Sancho as well, so they need more minutes. Doesn't help that Lindelof only signed last week. He's already injured. So you probably imagine there'll be some changes from the Everton game, the last league game. Harvey Elliott might come in to start. Kamara maybe able to do 60 minutes or so. But yeah, a lot of the players are what you would expect to see from a Unai Emery team.
Can you see him making any big tactical tweaks or changes, or is it very much a case of he has a way of playing, this is the way it is?
He'll make the smallest, so he might change where the centre midfielder stands when Villa are in build-up, for example. That's the only thing. But in terms of the overarching principles, they'll remain the same. You could shut your eyes, and if the ball was with the right back, you know where every other player would be.
Right.
That's just how they play, and that's what's made him so successful. But at the same time, that's why there's questions from supporters thinking, do we need to just evolve? Do we need to go to a back three or a back five? Do we need to go to a 4-3-3? Do we need two out-and-out wingers? These are the questions that the Villa fans are asking.
That's a bit of a concern, because you would ordinarily work on that kind of change during a pre-season where you want to get prepared for the new, to be 4 or 5 games into the season and be talking about, formation changes and stuff isn't great, I guess. What is his typical system then? Like, what can we expect in terms of shape from Villa? How will they line up on the pitch?
Yeah, so it's kind of difficult for me to explain. I touched on it earlier. So the left winger, so you'll see the left winger on paper. So it could be Morgan Rogers, McGinn, Harvey Elliott, or Sancho even. They're not going to start off on the left wing. They're in possession. There's going to be 2 number 10s behind Watkins. So it'll be the left winger tucking in to become a 10, and then Rogers or the out and out 10. The width will come from the left back, who's stationed very, very high and wide. Meanwhile, Villa will build in the back 3, and this is where the small changes come. So either with the 2 centre backs and the right back who inverts, and therefore the width comes from the right winger, or it will be centre midfielder. So Kamara's back, so it could happen now. He drops into the back 3. Cash pushes on to become a wing back. So it looks in possession almost like a 3-2-5 or something like that. So that's how Villa will play. Their goal is to overload midfield. So they attacked the most through central areas in the Premier League last season, along with Chelsea. And it's because they'll have a box midfield of 2 midfielders, 2 10s, Ollie Watkins up top, and they'll try and play through it. That's why they don't really use the wings too much. So that's how they play. It'll be very methodical. They'll want to keep the ball. They want Sunderland to come and press, because if they press, they can try and play around and get Rodgers into that between the lines where he's got a lot of space to run at the back line. So they'll play the same way every single game, really. They may, if Sunderland press man to man, they may go into the channels for Watkins, but that's actually becoming annoyingly, and for Villa fans, increasingly rare. They're still trying to play out from the back when teams are pressing, and they're causing their own trouble.
It's interesting to me that you say that, because that almost to me sounds like the ideal opposition for Sunderland, because we play with a low block and we have a very athletic midfield. And I'm just looking at the results. The 2 other teams that Villa have faced this season who play with a low block are Palace and Brentford, and they lost those games. So it gives me a little bit of hope, at least for this one. But it's probably a daft question, this, given I've just read the results out, but do they struggle against teams who play with a low block?
They always have, really. And I remember asking Emery about this last year, and this is when they were going, probably 18 months ago, when they were at their best, really. And I said, low block. And he said, this is probably the next step of our development. We have to find a way of breaking down low blocks. Villa are brilliant when there's space to run into, like a lot of clubs are. But they haven't really got that number 10. Maybe that changed with Asensio, that can thread passes through. Like Rodgers is a different type of 10. He's not going to be a guy that's going to beautifully craft passes through the lines. He's a real runner, real powerful runner. So finding ways to break down low blocks is hard, because, like I say, they haven't got a right winger. So they can't just pass out to their right winger who can beat the fullback 1v1 and get a cross in. They have to continue to play side to side, switch to play, try and find a route to go through. And, Villa lack pace. So trying to find, and finesse, really. So trying to break a low block down is hard without those 2 key ingredients.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how we match up then, because we've played, other than West Ham, and we beat them 3-0 at home, we've played exclusively teams who also play a low block, and we've done okay. But I think we're kind of looking ahead to the next few games and thinking, actually, we're playing teams who might want more of the ball, and that's why we've built this team. We've went out and we've signed players specifically to try and play against teams like Aston Villa. So this will be a real test of where we're at, in terms of our shape and stuff. The danger men, then you mentioned McGinn, you mentioned Watkins. We know quite a lot about those players, but if you were going to put your goggles on there and try and look into the future and see what's going to happen if Villa do win this game, who do you see having the biggest impact?
I think you have to say Ollie Watkins, because Villa are struggling to score. He's barely kicked the ball. Like, he had 1 touch in opposition penalty box last week. He averages 11 touches per game. Like, they can't get the ball to him. But his record against newly promoted sides is unbelievable. He scored 12 goals in his last 9 games against newly promoted sides. So I think he's obviously a danger man, even though he's been rusty and barely had a look in this season. Again, Morgan Rogers, there's people at Villa were saying at the start of the summer, we've got a huge pressure and huge onus on Watkins and Rogers being our main creative sparks because they're very good. But secondly, we haven't got the firepower we did last year with Rashford and Sensio. So the Erdin and the burden almost will fall on Rodgers because he is such a precocious talent and he's so good. And that's why you've seen so far. So many teams are really getting tight to him. Not let him turn, be very aggressive because they know and they're wary of how good he can be. So those two typically are the key players. I think one good thing for Sunderland is that Tielemans isn't playing. He's probably the player that passes and progresses, gets the creative machine from deep really. And again, that would help against a low block. So whenever Villa won last year, he was always the guy playing those balls for Watkins to run into, thread him, Rodgers through the lines. He would have been a really important player, but the onus will be on Rodgers and Rodgers and Watkins to find a goal of any kind for Villa.
And if we're going to hurt Villa, where do you see Sunderland hurting Villa?
Take your pick at the moment. Villa have been quite guilty of the ball being turned over in midfield and attacks being launched from there. I think that's a key thing. Villa get caught in transition. It's something that Emery's very wary of. And if you look at Newcastle, all their chances, I know they didn't score, were on transition. And maybe Kamara coming back, that can help solve it. But the way Villa play again, they can be quite open down the sides if a team turns them over. And genuinely, the way Villa are at the moment, they're very soft. If you can be physical, aggressive in their face, away from home, Villa have long struggled with that because the whole Emery idea is for control, for calm. But if you can perturb that, if you can just ruffle their feathers, they'll start making mistakes on the ball. You can see it on their faces almost, like they're overawed or they're physically shook up by an aggressive team that puts balls into the back post, that load the box up from every set play, that wins second balls, that presses aggressively from your own goal kicks. These things are very, very difficult for Villa to face. So yeah, there's a lot of routes, I guess, for Sunderland, but there's a part of me just thinks Villa at some point are going to click into gear. The question is, can they do it? And against a really good team, a very spirited team, going to be a loud atmosphere, and do something that they haven't done for a long time, and let's go away from home and put in a proper away performance.
Oh, you're just saying all the right things for us here, but it's just that inner pessimism, it just takes over I'm listening to you say all these things, I'm like, this just sounds so perfect for us at the minute. But then I'm like, but it's gonna, you're just always, just as you're thinking it's gonna turn at some point, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, it just sounds too good to be true, all of that. I don't know what to make.
It's bizarre. Because fans will think the same though. They were like, Sunderland's probably the worst game for us. Like a team that's really spirited on the up against a team that's flatlining. And we know these players don't react well to adversity away from home. But, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, like we say, probably if I was a Sunderland fan, I'll be pessimistic as well after hearing what I've said.
Yeah, that combined with the fact they haven't scored in the league yet, it just makes us go, oh God. The starting 11 for Villa, then what you're expecting them to line up like? I know you've kind of touched on a few positions there, but so it sounds like a lot of the decisions are going to be made for Emery based on injuries and so on.
Yeah, so you'd have, I think the back five's kind of maybe obvious. So Martinez, Cash, Konsa, Mings, Luka Dean. So same team that's been there 3.5 years ago. Midfield, you probably have Kamara. And the question is whether you want extra solidity. So you play Bogard, who's like a centre-back defensive midfielder. And that'd be quite telling to see. And that'll give an insight of what Villa's approach is going to be. Or you play John McGinn in there. I think McGinn's good there, but he's a little bit more attacking than Bogard. I think, it'd be one of those two. And then Villa have got a cluster of number 10s. Bundia, Harvey Elliott, Rodgers. McGinn can play there. They'll probably occupy two of the positions. And then the right wing, Villa are crying out for pace. So do you go Marlon, Gesson, or Sancho, who's not really a right winger, but hey, needs must. So those are the options really in those positions. And then, of course, Ollie Watkins will be up top. So that's what you're probably looking at. It'd be yeah, it'd be interesting. And the way Villa will set up is very telling. So against Everton last week, you saw Buendia and Bogart play, and that's when you thought, okay, Villa are going to try and play it safe and try and get a point here. If they play the same, then it'd probably be the similar type of want and game plan.
This is something we've talked about a fair bit on our podcast, is that despite me knowing how good Sunderland are and how well we've started the season, we are still a newly promoted team that finished 4th in the Championship last year. And for all intents and purposes, Villa and other teams should be looking at Sunderland and going, we should be going there and winning. You know, despite the fact of everything we've talked about already, when the fixtures came out, they would have looked at Sunderland away and thought, we should be trying to get 3 points there. So it's interesting because I really do wonder whether he's going to come here and go for it, because he's desperate for a win. He's desperate for goals. But at the same time, it's a tough place to come. So
yeah.
What do you think he's going to do? Because you said there, you know, he maybe went for a draw last week, but the longer it goes on, the way they're not scoring goals and they're not winning games, it becomes a little bit more desperate, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do think he'll feel his way into the game. He is away from home. At home, they're completely different beasts. Last year, they would go from the front foot straight away. This year, they feel their way into games. They'll want to be defensively solid. So and Emery referred to it in his last press conference in terms of we need to get back to our best is by building upwards. So we need to have a defensive base. We need to control our game, and then second half, when when Villa, depending on what the score is, and they're growing into the game, they feel more comfortable in the environment, in what Sunderland are doing, they'll start to let players off the lead a little bit. So I think they'll go there with an intent to be solid, to be robust, and then they hope that their structure, their better quality will hopefully tell. That's the game plan. But I don't see him flying out the traps and going full press and going, come on, we're going to win this straight away. I think it's been quite a slow burner of a game plan.
How do you see it going then? What's your gut feeling on this game?
Oh, well, the head says it should be like 3-1 Sunderland. But it's just you seeing at some point Villa are going to turn around. So I'll go 1-1. But all logistical sense in me says that Sunderland should win this quite comfortably, judging on recent evidence.
That's just such a weird thing for me to hear. That Sunderland should comfortably beat Aston Villa. It's been that long since we were even talking about it in that breath, you know. But I mean, look, if you were a neutral, we're not neutrals in this. You've got skin in the game, and so have I. If you were a neutral looking at this, you would probably say that, wouldn't you? You would probably say this is set up for Sunderland to get something.
Yeah, and that's where I come in on. You know, Villa fans probably hope for a win. Sunderland fans will see that they'll obviously be confident of a win. For me as a neutral, I think Sunderland are the favourites to win. But Emery has always pulled off brilliant results when people least expected it last season. So whether he's still got that magic in that bottle, I think we'll see it all on Sunday. That's why it's such a brilliant and fascinating game. Not only for me in terms of going to Sunderland for the first time, but in terms of like the storylines and what could happen and the ramifications if Villa lose. It's hard. There's a huge pressure on Villa to win.
Yeah, it's an interesting game, really is. I'm really looking forward to this one. And like you said, you're looking forward to making the trip up to the stadium. I think it's because it's been a good few weeks since we last played at home. We're all raring to go, and these games have felt like big occasions for Sunderland.
Yeah.
We've been out the Premier League a long time, and this is the third home league game, and each of them have been treated like big occasions. We've sold out. The atmosphere before the game's been brilliant. There's been extra little touches made to make it just feel more than just a league game, you know, and it's going to be the same again this weekend. So we're all really looking forward to it. And I mean, I would like to say good luck, but just not for this one, you know. We'll see how the rest of the season pans out for Villa. I'm sure they'll turn the corner at some point. It can't go on forever. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Where can people find your stuff? I know you obviously write for The Athletic. Can they find you anywhere else in terms of content? YouTube, TikTok, those sort of places? Or
yes.
Is it mostly just on the Athletic website?
Mainly on the Athletic, on the Aston Villa tab. But yeah, I'm on social media. So Twitter or X, whatever, it's J_Tanswell. And it's the same on all the other social media platforms. So if you want to see my tweeting, maybe it might be quite gloomy tweeting at the game, then yes, find me there.
And of course, if people want to get a little bit of extra insight into what to expect from Villa, they can read all your stuff from the past couple of weeks, can't they, from The Athletic. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much, Jacob. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate, and we really, really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, mate.
Thanks, and thanks to the listeners. As always, we will be back with another pod tomorrow, doing our Roker Report match preview, where it'll be less Villa focused and more Sunderland focused. And of course, we're here every single day on How We Are the Podcast, so make sure you get subscribed if you're not already subscribed. Over on the Roker Report website, we've got content coming out the ears, and before and after the game, there will be preview and reaction to everything. Hopefully, talking about a Sunderland victory at the Stadium of Light for the third time this season. That'll be nice. Hopefully, don't leave it as late this time, because Brentford was a bit of a give me a bit of a scare, but we got there in the end. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back tomorrow with another pod. We'll see you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.